soldiers will hear you. Welcome to episode 21 of the Horror Headquarters Nightlings. I'm so excited to be recording this episode right now because this one is so controversial, so infamous, that it's widely regarded as just a myth or a folk story. But I believe otherwise, and you'll find out why. If you're new here, make sure to hit that follow button and rate us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. I would very much appreciate it so much with all my heart, and it would truly put a smile on my face. If you're not new here, welcome back, and you guys are definitely in for a treat tonight. We're going to go a little bit back now to 1862, where we're introduced to a young Confederate officer and his wife, Melanie Lanier, commonly known as the Lady in Black. Now, this alleged myth takes place in Massachusetts, where I recently visited. If you guys have listened to the recent episode, you guys would know that. And you would also know that I mentioned a lady in black. But this is a different lady in black. But I'll get to the other one in a little bit. This one took place in 1862 in Fort Warren, Massachusetts, which was during the time of the American Civil War, to all you history geeks out there. Samuel Lanier, a young Confederate officer, was captured early in the war and became one of the many Confederate soldiers imprisoned at Fort Warren. He was allegedly taken prisoner along with a large number of troops at Roanoke Island, North Carolina. The soldier's wife, Melanie, caught wind of his whereabouts, some believing he stealthily smuggled a letter out to her from the island prison. Melanie ached in sorrow, but was determined to bring her husband home. She disguised herself in men's clothing as well as cutting her hair short and boarded a boat that was headed to George's Island, where she planned to free her husband, but it backfired. Now, there have been many rumors that she befriended a Confederate ally that housed her near the prison during the days before she could get into the fort and reach her husband. She used the time she had to communicate with him through the prison walls, telling him each step of her plan in secret. Now, on the night of the planned escape, she boarded a small rowboat and brought with her a pistol, a pickaxe, and a handful of rope, which she planned to use to dig him and a couple of other prisoners to freedom. Now, she rowed herself onto this island, and she was able to get into the rifle slit and enter the prison. Now, if you guys don't know what a rifle slit is, it's a very, very tiny opening in a wall that she somehow slipped into. And if that's truly how she got into the prison, then she must be one of the skinniest people alive. I will be posting a reference photo because you guys will be as stunned as I am. But it doesn't stop there. Now, you might be wondering, how did she know where to enter the prison? Before entering, she waited patiently offshore in the darkness at a designated meeting spot. As minutes passed, her husband finally signaled her by whistling a tune that she was familiar with. She knew then that the plan was ready, and she began to move towards the wall. She used that rope to get herself through the rifle slit and had a reunion with her husband. But they had to act quickly if they were going to escape successfully. Melanie began to dig along with other co-prisoners that were in on the escape, along with her husband. Their plan was to get into the arsenal so that they could arm themselves and overtake the prison, as well as escape safely with her beloved husband. But there's one thing she forgot to rule out: the noise that comes with making a tunnel. using a pickaxe. Their digging ended up being loud enough to catch the attention of a couple of Union guards that were listening below where they were digging. After other authorities had been alerted, a riot began inside the prison. Melanie herself was found in a standoff with a Union soldier, and a bunch of the prisoners attempted to escape. During this riot, a guard attempted to overthrow Melanie, so she fired her pistol at him, only for it to hit her husband, causing him to bleed to death in front of her eyes. As a result, Melanie was immediately arrested for attempting to release her husband from prison. She was sentenced to death by hanging for the crime of treason. Still in her disguise, Melanie pleaded with the guards to allow her the dignity of dying in woman's clothing. Now keep in mind, there were no female prisoners on this island, so the guards were only able to find a simple black gown to clothe Melanie in her final moments. The body of Melanie Lanier was buried in that gown on the grounds of the island. And so it ends, right? Following her grim death, Melanie's image began to appear wandering around Fort Warren. Witnessed in the same black gown, she longingly moves about, mourning her husband. Soldiers have even reported seeing and feeling her saddened soul among them. And just like that, the Lady in Black was born. And again, many soldiers at the fort claim to have seen the mysterious apparition of a lady in black. Her voice could be heard in the corridor of dungeons. Soldiers that would play poker observed a stone rolling, while others would discover footprints that were spotted in the snow outside the fort, coming from nowhere and going from nowhere. Some soldiers, according to tradition, were even court-martialed for shooting at a phantom in black, and one was brought up on charges for fleeing his post because he claimed he was chased by a lady in black, resulting in him breaking his leg. Now there are countless stories of this. Paranormal investigators, researchers at MIT, all of which have debunked the story of the Lady in Black. But I believe it to be true. And the reason being is that I had a very weird experience while in Boston, while I was near a body of water. From what I recall, we weren't necessarily going to a specific location. We were kind of just roaming around Boston at the time that this all happened. But we neared a port of water where they were having some type of festival in the background, but like near the water there wasn't really anything happening. It was just people walking, I guess. And there was a handrail and I decided to lean up against it. And as I was doing that, I heard a person shushing me and saw someone walking along the edge of the water, and I'm like, oh, it's just a kid or someone just walking around looking at things. But then I remember freezing and staring very closely and seeing this person who was walking very slowly and then suddenly falling into the water, disappearing. It's kind of like they disappeared into thin air, and now I know that sounds crazy. It could be just my mind, I don't know, but it was weird. And I remember like saying, my brother was like, what? Because my brother went with me, and he was like, what? I'm like, I saw something, and I like started walking closer. I'm like, what was? And I froze again, and then I saw a bunch of people staring at me. So I stopped, I stood up, and I turned around, and I said, oh, it was nothing. And I remember as I was walking back, I got so much chills all around my body, because I'm like, did I just see a ghost? And I actually wasn't going to bring this up, but doing the research on this, I think it was the Lady in Black, and I'm not just saying that. And I have this written down in my notes because I remember going home and writing this all down because I wanted to talk about it for a podcast episode. And I thought maybe I'll just bring it up in like a later episode, make it a bonus episode. But I honestly think that what I was seeing was a shadow of the Lady in Black. Coincidence? I think not. But it was definitely very creepy, and this kind of furthers my believing in the Lady in Black, of her spirit. Now, you know what? I might sound like a cuckoo head, but that's the reason why you guys clicked on this podcast. This podcast is all about my experiences, what I've experienced, no filter, and I'm not lying about any of this stuff. This all happened, and I have so many more stories that happened from Boston and in Salem that I cannot wait to discuss with you guys. But this one is definitely very disturbing, and now thinking that it may be the Lady in Black that was shushing me, or it was probably someone else shushing me, and then seeing someone walk across the water. Just all very creepy, possibly in my head, but I truly believe that it was the Lady in Black, that I was seeing a projection of her. If not, then I guess it was a different ghost, because that was creepy as hell. And it still haunts me till this day, as well as a bunch of other things that occurred in Boston and Salem that I will get into in a later episode. But definitely very creepy. But I also wanted to bring up that I asked one of the townspeople in Boston about the Lady in Black, and they shared with me a very unusual story that I'm still questioning today. I was approached by this woman as I was reading the description of the Lady in Black from the Merchant Hotel, because there's like this little stand outside that like explains the history of how it was built, how it was almost broken down, and then the Lady in Black that appears in a window. And I was reading it, and then this lady came up and she's like, "Do you believe in this?" And I'm like, "I think so, yeah." And she surprisingly said, "Yeah, I do too, but I never used to." And I got interested. I'm like, "What do you mean?" And she's like, "Well, apparently there's a long history of the Lady in Black, and a lot of her relatives were related to queens and kings of the past." And I'm like, "Okay, this is just another cuckoo talking their head off." But they said something really interesting that's still on my mind to this day. They stated that one of Melanie Lanier's relatives was very close with the builder of the Merchant, the person who created the Merchant, which was the Merchant Hotel, where the Lady in Black apparently appears in a window. And this is the other Lady in Black. And I'm like, "Oh, is there a connection there?" And she's like, "I'm not sure, but I've done my research on it. They definitely were very close with each other. They have a long history of being in each other's families' bloodlines." And I'm like, "Okay." I'm like, I wasn't 100% believing her, but I was very intrigued with the story. And then she proceeded to say, "But you wouldn't find anything on it today because they've gotten rid of it. It's not in any history books. They've taken it out of like police reports and all that kind of stuff. So there's not any proof that I can show you. But when I was younger, I did my research on it, and it was still there, and they hadn't removed it then." And, I took it with a grain of salt. She could be lying, she couldn't be. But if it's true, then that is hella creepy, and I definitely want to stay in the Merchant Hotel now and learn more about it. I obviously will make an episode on the Merchant Hotel, but I want to jump a little bit and say that there is actually no proof that Melanie Lanier was hung, or that she had a husband that was arrested. There's like a bunch of theories about this. Everyone says it's a myth, like I said in the beginning. There's no proof of it, just like the lady said. That's why I'm assuming it's probably a fake story. But the naysayers state that the reason that the story was allegedly made up was to keep people away from the prison, to not allow any other people to try breaking into the prison. I just slipped into a British accent there. I don't know if anyone heard that for like one word. That was really weird. Was Melanie Lanier British? Probably. But it's definitely a topic that I'd want to do further research on, even though there's a bunch of articles that are on Google that are made by all these different historians saying that it's not true. I do believe it is, being that I saw a very weird figure next to the water. But next time I go to Boston, I definitely want to visit this island that she traveled to, because it exists. This island does exist. That person did exist during the Civil War. It was all there, so I definitely want to go to the island and see if anything changes over there, if I see any apparitions or something like that. But it's definitely a very interesting story overall, very eerie story, very infamous story that a lot of people dislike talking about. So I'm hoping the next time that I go to Boston, or the next time I even bring up this subject wherever I am, that I'll find someone that's actually interested in it and that may have something different to contribute to the story. Do you believe in the Lady in Black? Why or why not? Drop it in the Q&A below on Spotify, and I'll read through them all, and I'll be sure to respond to you guys in next week's episode. I'll also be leaving a poll under, which will be related to this episode that you guys can also vote on. And again, this is for Spotify only, unfortunately. But Spotify is free, anyone can get it, and all you need is an email to sign up. So make sure to get it so you guys can vote and participate on this. But another thing that you guys can do is send me a voice message. This is for everyone, no matter what platform you guys are listening on. It's in the description below. You guys can copy and paste it onto Safari or Google and send me a voice message. And I will definitely listen to it and will respond to you as well whenever you guys send it, whether it's for next week's episode or the week after that. But that's something that all of you guys can contribute to. I'd love to go over the poll results from the previous episode. The question was, do you believe in magic? Now, this was a test. I wanted to see who was listening to my podcast, and I was pleasantly surprised. First place was yes. Second place was absolutely, and maybe it's real, I don't know. I'll take that, honestly, I'll take it. Third place was eh. Some of you guys are just not convincing at all. Fourth place was no. And fifth place was it's fake. How dare you? How dare you say that magic is fake? I'm just joking. Well, I'm hoping that through this podcast I can try to convince people that it's real, because I personally think magic is real, even though a lot of it is really just a trick. There is some magic that is real, and I've seen it before, trust me. There's also some responses in the Q&A that I wanted to read. Someone said that magic is just a trick. Another person said magic is real, some people just refuse to believe it. That's kind of true. And another person said, loving this episode so damn much. Also, Salem is a dream destination for me. Excited to hear more of your stories. Thank you so much to all you guys who participated. You guys are all so sweet. I love talking with you guys through the Q&A and being able to talk about it on my podcast episodes. So make sure to submit something in the Q&A if you guys have any questions, are curious about anything, have any feedback, horror recommendations, horror movie recommendations, TV shows, all that kind of jazz. I'm very, very interested in it, and I do read everything. So please participate if you can. Wake up, Nightlings. That is the end of episode 21 of the Horror Headquarters. Thank you guys so much for tuning in if you got this far. I really, truly appreciate it, and I'm not just saying that, and I'm going to keep saying this through each episode, and I'm going to keep saying that I keep saying that I'm going to keep saying this. That made a lot of sense. But I really do appreciate it, you guys. It makes me so happy doing this. I love talking with you guys about this kind of stuff. I love discussing horror in any way I can. And if you are a new listener, I really hope you guys enjoyed it. I would really appreciate if you guys considered following us and rating us on Apple and Spotify, and also following us on Instagram at The Horror Headquarters, on Twitter at The Horror HQ, and signing up for our email newsletter on our website, which can all be found in our link fire on our account on Instagram as well as on Twitter. So make sure to hit that subscribe button so that you guys are updated on everything. And if you sign up for the email newsletter, you guys would have received a very special email about next week's episode, as well as a bunch of other things that are coming up. There's so much planned for this podcast, so if you're a true horror fan, a true horror fanatic, or just getting into horror, make sure to hit that follow button and become part of the Nightling Club, an exclusive club only made for you guys listening. But until next time, tread very lightly, and pray for forgiveness. Midnight hour is approaching.